Commander-in-Chief question again. You've been the head of neurosurgery for a big hospital. You're on a lot of boards of a lot of companies. You've traveled the world. You're going traveling again next week. But does that prepare you to command troops from Djibouti to Japan, troops from Afghanistan to Iraq, to be in charge of the men and women watching on Armed Service Network tonight?
Well, you know, there's a false narrative that only the political class has the wisdom and the ability to be commander-in-chief. But if you go back and you study the design of our country, it was really designed for the citizen statesman. And we need to be talking about, where does your experience come from? You know, and I've had a lot of experience building things, organizing things, you know, a national scholarship program. One of the things that you'll notice if you look through my life is that I don't do a lot of talking, I do a lot of doing. And really, it says more about a person than how much they talk. And then some people say you're weak because, you know, you're not loud and you're not boisterous and you're not rude. But the fact of the matter is, look and see what I've done. And that speaks volumes about strength.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. We've been talking tonight about programs and policy proposals that you all have to keep Americans safe, and it's a big discussion on the campaign trail, also about border security and immigration. So let's talk about immigration. Senator Rubio, you co-authored a bill with Democrats 2 years ago that allowed a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. Do you still support that path to citizenship, which means giving those immigrants rights, like the right to vote?
Yeah. Immigration is not an issue that I read about in the newspaper or watch a documentary on PBS or CNN. It's an issue I've lived around my whole life. My family are immigrants. My wife's family are immigrants. All of my neighbors are immigrants. I see every aspect of this problem, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And here's what we learned in 2013. The American people don't trust the federal government to enforce our immigration laws. And we will not be able to do anything on immigration until we first prove to the American people that illegal immigration is under control. And we can do that. We know what it takes to do that. It takes at least 20,000 more additional border agents. It takes completing those 700 miles of fencing. It takes a mandatory E-Verify system and a mandatory entry-exit tracking system to prevent visa overstays. After we've done that, the second thing we have to do is reform and modernize the legal immigration system. And after we've done those two things, I think the American people are going to be very reasonable with what do you do with someone who's been in this country for 10 or 12 years, who hasn't otherwise violated our laws because if they're a criminal, they can't stay. They'll have to undergo a background check, pay a fine, start paying taxes, and ultimately they'll be given a work permit. And that's all they're going to be allowed to have for at least 10 years. But you can't even get to that third step until you've done the other two things. And that was the lesson we learned in 2013. There is no trust that the federal government will enforce the law. They will not support you until they see it done first.
Senator, you haven't answered the question. You just described a very long path, but does that path end at citizenship?
Oh, but I've answered that question repeatedly. I am personally open, after all of that has happened, and after 10 years in that probationary status where all they have is a work permit, I personally am open to allowing people to apply for a green card. That may not be a majority position in my party, but that's down the road. You can't even begin that process until you prove to people, not just pass a law that says you're going to bring illegal immigration under control. You're going to have to do it and prove to people that it's working. And that was the lesson of 2013, and it's more true today than it was then. After a migratory crisis on the border with minors coming over that you're seeing start up again now, after all these executive orders the president has issued, more than ever, we need to prove to people that illegal immigration is under control.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz, on the campaign trail, Senator Rubio has said that his immigration plan isn't that different from yours. Is that true?
Well, he has attempted to muddy the waters, but I think anyone that watched the battle that we had, you know, there was a time for choosing, as Reagan put it, where there was a battle over amnesty, and some chose, like Senator Rubio, to stand with Barack Obama and Chuck Schumer and support a massive amnesty plan. Others chose to stand with Jeff Sessions and Steve King and the American people and secure the border. And let me mention, this issue is actually directly connected to what we've been talking about, because the front line with ISIS isn't just in Iraq and Syria, it's also in Kennedy Airport and the Rio Grande. Border security is national security. And you know, one of the most troubling aspects of the Rubio-Schumer Gang of Eight bill was that it gave President Obama blanket authority to admit refugees, including Syrian refugees, without mandating any background checks whatsoever. Now, we've seen what happened in San Bernardino. When you're letting people in, when the FBI can't vet them, it puts American citizens at risk. And I tell you, if I'm elected president, we will secure the border. We will triple the Border Patrol. We will build a wall that works, and I'll get Donald Trump to pay for it.
I'll build it.
Dana.
Thank you. Senator Rubio, please.
Yeah, a couple points. In 2013, we had never faced a crisis like the Syrian refugee crisis now. Up until that point, a refugee meant someone fleeing oppression, fleeing communism, like it is in my community. As far as Ted's record, I'm always puzzled by his attack on this issue. Ted, you support legalizing people who are in this country illegally. Ted Cruz supported a 500% increase in the number of H-1B visas, the guest workers that are allowed into this country, and Ted supports doubling the number of green cards. So I think what's important for us to understand is there is a way forward on this issue that we can bring our country together on. And when I'm president, I will do it. And it will begin by bringing illegal immigration under control and proving it to the American people.
Dana.
Senator Cruz.
Look, I understand that Marco wants to raise confusion. It is not accurate, what he just said, that I supported legalization. Indeed, I led the fight against his legalization and amnesty bill. And you know, there was one commentator that put it this way, that for Marco to suggest our record's the same, it is like suggesting the fireman and the arsonist have the same record because they're both at the scene of the fire. He was fighting to grant amnesty and not to secure the border. I was fighting to secure the border. And this also goes to trust. Listen, on campaign trails, candidates all the time make promises. You know, Marco said he learned that the American people didn't trust the federal government.
No, Dana,
he campaigned in Florida promising to lead the fight against amnesty.
Support legalizing
he
people that are in this
campaigned
country
promising
illegally.
to lead the fight against
Ladies
amnesty.
and gentlemen,
then
this is why the
Stand by,
sorry.
Senator Cruz, can you answer that question, please?
Does Ted Cruz rule out ever legalizing people that are in this country illegally now?
Senator Cruz?
I have never supported legalization.
Do you rule it out?
I have never supported legalization, and I do not intend to support legalization. And let me tell you how you do this. What you do is you enforce the law. What you do is you enforce the law.
We have been talking about this
Ms.
for 25
Fiorina, please wait your turn.
years.
We're going to get to you on this. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Senator
you haven't
Cruz.
gotten to me. This
Senator
is
Cruz,
why
go
the
ahead.
nation is fed up with the political class.
What you do is you enforce the law. I've laid out a very, very detailed immigration plan on my website, tedcruz.org. It's 11 pages, existing federal law, and in particular, the question of what to do with people who are here now. You enforce the law. That means you stop the Obama administration's policy of releasing criminal illegal aliens. Do you know how many illegal aliens Bill Clinton deported? 12 million. Do you know how many illegal aliens George W. Bush deported? 10 million. We can enforce the laws, and if we secure the border, that solves the problem. And as president, I will solve this problem and secure the border.
Mr. Trump, you like to say that you restarted this conversation in the campaign.
I think I did.
So who do you side with? Who do you side with in this? Senator Rubio or Senator Cruz?
I have a very hard-line position. We have a country or we don't have a country. People that have come into our country illegally, they have to go. They have to come back in through a legal process. I want a strong border. I do want a wall. Walls do work. You just have to speak to the folks in Israel. Walls work if they're properly constructed. I know how to build. Believe me, I know how to build. But I feel a very, very strong bind, and really I'm bound to this country. We either have a border or we don't. People can come into the country. We welcome people to come in, but they have to come in legally.
Thank you. Governor Bush, listening to this, do you think this is the tone, this immigration debate, that Republicans need to take to win back Hispanics into your party, especially states like where we are in Nevada that has a pretty large Hispanic community?
No, it isn't, but it's an important subject to talk about for sure. And I think people have good ideas on this. Clearly, we need to secure the border. Coming here legally needs to be a lot easier than coming here illegally. If you don't have that, you don't have the rule of law. We now have a national security consideration, public health issues. We have an epidemic of heroin overdoses in all places in this country because of the ease bringing heroin in. We have to secure the border. It is a serious undertaking, and yeah, we do need more fencing, and we do need to use technology, and we do need more border control, and we need to have better cooperation, by the way, with local law enforcement. There are 800,000 cops on the beat. They ought to be trained to be the eyes and ears for law enforcement, for the threat against terror as well as for immigration. This is a serious challenge, and if we can get it right, yeah, we'll start winning votes again. The real problem isn't anybody on this stage. The real problem is Barack Obama has had 6 years to advocate a position to fix this, and he's done nothing. The Congress has funded these programs of building more fencing and doing all this, and he hasn't done it. He wants to maintain it as a wedge issue, and so does Hillary Clinton. Republicans need to fix it, and when we do, we'll be better off.
Governor, thank you very much. Dr. Carson, you recently visited a refugee camp in Jordan, and you deemed it, in your words, really quite nice, saying the people there didn't want to come to the United States. Do you think these camps are a long-term solution to the problem of Syrian refugees?
Well, it was very interesting having an opportunity to talk to the Syrians themselves, and I asked them, what do you want? What is your supreme desire? Their supreme desire was to be settled back in their own country. I said, what can Americans and other countries do? They said, support the efforts of those who are trying to provide safety for us, including the Jordanians. Of course, they had a brand new hospital, for instance, that was unstaffed because there wasn't enough money to do it. But here's what's really neat. If you go into Hasaka province in northeastern Syria, that's an area that's as big as Lebanon. It's controlled by the Kurds, the Christians, and the moderate Sunnis. And there are airstrips and hotels. You could settle a lot of people there. All we would have to do is be willing to provide them with some weaponry, some defensive weaponry. And we seem to be afraid to give the Kurds weaponry. We like to send it for some strange reason through Baghdad, and then they only get a tenth of it. And if we would support them, we have a perfect ideal there. We don't need to set this up as we either take a bunch of refugees who will be infiltrated with terrorists. I guarantee you, for them not to be, would to be terrorist malpractice. And we need to choose the right choice, not these false choices.
Senator Paul, you oppose letting in Syrian refugees at this time into the United States. The U.S. has already accepted 2,000 Syrian refugees, including 13 living here in Las Vegas right now. Would you send them back? What would you do with these people?
You know, I think we need to set the record straight on this, because I think Marco misspoke about the bill. On the Gang of Eight bill, there was no provisions really for extra scrutiny or safety for refugees. At the time the bill came up, 2 Iraqi refugees came to my hometown, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Their fingerprints were on a bomb from Iraq. They were in the database, but we didn't pick them up. We relocated them here, put them in government housing, got them on food stamps, and we began providing for them, but we didn't have adequate security. On the Gang of Eight bill, on Marco's bill, we had an opportunity. There was a conservative consensus for an amendment I put forward called Trust But Verify that would have strengthened border security on both refugees, students, and those coming here. And Marco sided and was, I guess, more sympathetic to Chuck Schumer and to the president than he was to conservative principles. But this goes directly to national defense. And if he wants to run as a national defense conservative, he's got to explain why he hasn't stepped up to support border security.
Senator Rubio.
Well, as he's just admitted, the reason why those refugees were allowed in is because they messed up in how they used the actual database. They should have known. They didn't, because they didn't run the actual law as it exists now. It didn't work well. As far as the refugees are concerned, it's not that America doesn't want to accept refugees, Wolf. It's that we may not be able to, because this is an issue we have to be 100% right on. If we allow 9,999 Syrian refugees into the United States, and all of them are good people, but we allow one person in who's an ISIS killer, we just get one person wrong. We got a serious problem. And there is not a single person in the national defense apparatus of this country that can guarantee you we're going to be 100% right. And that's why, as president, I'll take this very seriously.
Senator Paul, you didn't answer the question about the 2,000 Syrian refugees who are already here in the United States. Will you send them back or let them stay?
What my bill would do would be only for refugees going forward. So I haven't taken a position on sending anyone home, but I have taken the position that we have a lot of problems here in our country, and that one of the things that we do, charity is about giving your own money. Charity isn't giving someone else's money. To put everyone on government housing and food stamps and bring them in from around the world, I think is a mistake. To give of your own money, I've given to my church. My church has helped people that came from Bosnia. That's a good thing. But we shouldn't have a program where we just say that we're going to take care of the world's refugees. Nobody in the Middle East is doing anything. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, all the Gulf nations are doing nothing. They need to step up and take refugees.
We have another